welcome to A Can or Not, a podcast where we think and talk about issues we face as Christians and if we can handle them or not. I'm your host, Xian, and today we have Liz and Yessy to talk about this question. Can you have a work, life, ministry balance? So, just as a starter, some introduction. Yessy, well, what are you working as? And how long are your working hours per week?
Hi everyone, my name is Yessy and I'm currently a lecturer at Monash University, Malaysia. Based on my contract, my working hours are basically 40 hours a week. So give and take, I would have to say. That's all from
Is
me.
that is that a Monday to Friday only?
Yes, Monday to Friday only. So we stick to the normal working hours, I suppose.
Okay. What about you, Liz? What are you working as, and is a Monday to Friday job?
Hi, my name is Liz. I'm an architect and I also work 40 hours generally. Monday to Friday, occasionally on Saturday if it requires, but apart from that, it's pretty balanced.
Do you do it 9 to 5, or do you work past the 5 p.m.?
Uh, mm, Generally, I think six o'clock is the cutoff. Yeah,
Nine to
but
six.
yeah. And then in my own time, I do spend like maybe an hour or two preparing for the following day. But yeah, it's on my own personal time.
Yessy, what about you? Lecturers probably end at 5 o'clock, right? But there should be also preparation work involved.
Well, preparation is a bit easier actually. The toughest job is to entertain queries, responding to emails, and that's where we need to draw the boundaries. As I mentioned to you in the earlier conversation, I usually actually, finish earlier. I start at 9, finish at 3 or 4, take a break, have an early dinner, and chit chat with my family. And that's one of the perks of working from home, I guess. The second part of work starts. So that's just one of the different ways I separate my days. During the normal working hours, I have meeting to attend. As a lecturer, there's some creative process that I need to do. That usually happens 8 to 10 or 8 to 11. So the 2 episodes, I suppose. So it's not really clear, but yeah.
Okay. So in church, what ministries do you serve in? I'll start with Yessy.
I'm with the worship ministry. So I joined one of the teams. I guess in the pandemic time we do recording, and then if in the normal times I actually play the keys. I also serve in the life group. So I'm actually helping in the worship ministry as well. Sometimes I did the discussion for the life group. So I guess that's where the so-called ministry is at the church.
Yeah, what about you, Liz?
Same with Yessy. I'm also on the worship team. We're actually in the same team.
Yeah.
And I'm the vocals for the team. So usually we serve, I think, about once or twice a month. Especially during the MCO time, it's been more frequent. Generally serving on the worship team, preparing, which takes about 2-3 weeks.
I think you also live like this.
Yeah. I've just started lead into the leading role, so it's generally planning for the next worship. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned what the preparation 2 or 3 weeks. If you have to average, how much commitment is that per week into ministry? How many hours?
How much? Maybe about 3-4 hours in a week. For that session. So normally I try to do it on like the weekends. Frees up. So during the week, I'd be searching for songs, and then during the weekends, I would start to collate the set lists, which I think would work for the sermon. It's a bit of research as well, because to understand what the preacher is going to talk about, whether the song set list reflects in in the sermon and everything. So yeah, I think about 3-4 hours to collate, and then throughout the week, I'd spend like 20 minutes just looking at songs.
Right, but that's only when you are in charge of worship that week, right? So
Mm.
how often is the rotation? Do you do it like once a month then, on average?
Yeah. Once a month, sometimes twice a month. Yeah. I think in the last MCO, it's been more frequent. So yeah, twice a month in the last two months, I think.
Okay. Yeah, is it the same time spent for you, Yessy?
I think Liz would have spent more time because I guess as a worship leader, you also need to put some thoughts into the songs and the narrative that you will say. But for me, I tend to take this as I don't know, relaxing opportunities. And so if I were to be singing at the occasion, so I'll just try to, because usually I will do the tenor, so I need to play the tenor voice over and over. Usually during my downtime, so that will relax me a bit as well as focusing myself and centering myself as well. Yeah, so that's what I usually do. But if I have to lead the worship in the live group, and usually that goes along the week, right? So because we know the message that we will discuss in the live group, so I'll just have to make sure that the song will help whatever discussion that will go on.
Yeah, so there's two ministry, right? So your life group and plus the worship. How many hours is that per week then?
I don't know. I mean, as I said, I put in the downtime, so perhaps around 4 or 5. Not really, tallying everything up, but I guess around that mark, 4 or 5 hours, I guess.
So to you, it's a relaxing time. You don't see it as work. It's downtime. It's like relaxing time.
It actually
Yeah.
helps me, it helps me, where things get hard at work, when students get pestering you with lots of emails, and sometimes you just need to repeat yourself, 1,000 times. It helps to be reminded of what love is, I guess.
Yeah.
So that helps. I don't know about Liz.
Yeah. I'm definitely the same. After a long work day, you come to you come to preparing, and then it kind of brings you back. It kind of centers you back on God. It's like, hey, come back. So it's definitely not work. It's definitely an enjoyment thing lah. And also time of reflection, self-reflection, which also helps towards prepping for the worship as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask if it's manageable to you, but it seems like it is because you see it as a relaxing time. It's not like work on top of work. So I guess yeah, how do you think my next question is how do you think Christians should view the popular slogan work-life balance? I added the ministry to the equation, work-life ministry balance. Or do you think like, ministry is life? So yeah, how do you think Christians should think about that slogan? Start with Lisa, I think.
Yeah. I think. I think first of all, when I think of ministry to me is part of the lifestyle. And whatever you do, whether it's your work or your downtime, it's you're constantly centered on God, and that should reflect in your work. It should also reflect in your downtime. But if you talk about having a work-life balance, if you talk about this worship then gets stressful if your work is, you're being hounded by a lot of work, it can be a bit of a challenge sometimes. Like let's say if say I was rushing for a deadline and suddenly, I just happen to need to worship on the same day as well. So sometimes, I'll be like, oh, okay, I wrap up my work. Let's say the worship is at 8:30. Would have to have a quick dinner. Wrap up the work, have a quick dinner, and then next thing I have to like jump straight into worship. It's like you then have to try and find little nooks and crannies of time throughout the week. Sometimes you don't have that time, so you would be like maybe listening to the music while I'm working at the same time. So it's just trying to find that little 5-10 minutes, which you always have 5-10 minutes to spare. So I find that just trying to find those slots where you can kind of balance the two. It always works out in the end. By God's grace. During our rehearsals, we're always a mess. But by the Sunday, everything works out. I think you can ask Yessy. I give him quite a challenging time with the tenor parts in his worship as well.
It is fun time. I mean, as Liz is just saying just now, everything has become, an integral part. It's just everything become integrated. So there's no separation as much as which part of life is work, which part of life is your ministry. I tend to see my work even as my ministry. So that would probably be the way I view things. I mean, although work has been an integral part of my life, but I try my best not to make work to define my life. So because we also have our identity secured in Christ.
Yep.
And that where things can be a bit dangerous, because when people say that work is an integral part of their life and they let work define who they are, that things where we get messy. So I'm thankful that I mean my father taught me this. I mean, he was quite busy, but he also took an eldership at the church, and he mentioned to me this one statement before. Thank I would like to thank God for this opportunity to serve, because had I not this opportunity, I may go astray. So that always serve as a reminder. The need. We may be busy. We may need to squeeze sometimes here and there, but it pays off in actually center you.
Yeah. So how, when you say, work is a ministry, how do you add the Christian elements inside your work? I mean, how, essentially, what do you mean by it's a ministry, lah?
Well, I tend to have a lot more patience stock under my belt. So when I got some notes coming from students, you seem to be very patient. Oh yeah, thank you for that. Lots of practice are required, but I guess we extend grace the way we actually show love, assist people where we can. But at the same time, there also been a fair bit of time that I share with my life group. I feel like I'm being picked on because I'm easy extending my help to other people, then other people start to take advantage of me. It's a bit of a trade-off, showing love and just taking advantage by other people. So I guess one of the things that I reflect so much is, we also need to protect ourselves. We cannot just stay as a dove. So we also need to be shrewd. We need to be smart as well. That's what the characteristics of being Christians. That doesn't mean that people will be able to take advantage of you. But you also need to make a stand, and you also need to, values. I mean, integrity is very important, because no one will tell you how much time you spend with your students. Whether you do your marking properly. But it's just part of being, having being a Christian. So you're a Christian regardless where you are. So when you mark, so you remember that you're not doing it for human, but you're doing it for Christ, for God. So that always scares me, and that helps me to, that pretty much manifests the quality of my work and my interactions with people. So I hope that I can, I live up to that expectation.
Yeah. What about you, Liz? Do you view it the same way?
Yeah, I definitely view it the same way, in the sense that even in work, it's a ministry, because there are a lot of people outside of the church who have not heard of Christ. And I see my work as and myself as a way of exhibiting what a Christ-like person should be. So I try to have my decisions be informed by what Christ tells me to do. So in whatever I do in work as well, it's like, is it biblical to do it? Is that the right thing to do? Sometimes you're under a lot of pressure, or you might not get along with someone, or you have conflicts with someone. Then how do you react to that person when it's not necessarily so easygoing? So at the back of my head, it's like, okay, yes, I may not get along with this person, but what does Christ want me to do? So how should I react to that? And so that kind of informs and guides how I work in the workplace as well, and how I speak to people, interact with people. And And also sharing the message as well. You know, there are many times when you are in conversation with so many people in so many walks of life in different industries in work. And you get to know these people who are from different backgrounds, and I find that that's the best place to share the message. It's just a very open conversation, and you know everyone is kind of going about their lives, but it's yeah, people are just communicating a lot more in the workplace as well. So yeah.
Yeah, you spend almost more than half your life, I think, working. So
Yep.
so you do have a lot of chance to talk to your colleagues about Christ or just about life in general.
Yeah. And
So-
also I think the actions speak louder than words a lot. So yeah, I try to be quite try to be self-aware in that sense. Yeah, and try to kind of exhibit what like a Christ like I guess character. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to probe more. So action speaks louder than words, right? What specifically, you know, do you have any tips for people? What do you find that people will catch and realize that, this is different from the rest of the colleagues I know? Do you have any like tips and tricks that, you know, so a certain type of behavior make them say, she's different or he's different?
Yeah, I think in the workplace it can become a bit of a rat race.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of environment has the potential to become quite toxic because you're constantly trying to be on top of another person, right? And I think Christ tells us not to do that. For example, you know, you're going to take advantage of a person to have a better position, a better gain for yourself. And in order to do that, you step over someone to do it. Do you do that? So something like that. It's very easy to fall into that trap when you're trying to advance in your career. So yeah, I don't think Christ tells us not to step on people, tells us to love and support other people. That's one example that, you know, I try to
Yeah.
follow.
Well, try not to do certain negative behavior.
Yeah.
Even though the
Or if someone does it to you, then how do you respond as well?
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's a big question. How do you respond when someone steps on you? I mean, that's a difficult problem and issue. And
Yeah. I mean, Jesus tells us to turn the other cheek, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but
so
Yessy said not to let people take advantage of you. Then how do you balance that?
yeah, I think there's a difference between a person taking advantage of you and knowing where your boundaries are and standing your ground. It's not. It doesn't mean that you let a person step on you. You let them know where your boundaries are. You can be nice about it, but you shouldn't budge if you feel that it's not something that is right.
Right. Would you then?
There's a difference. Yeah, there's a difference between being nice and letting someone step on you. In other
Yeah.
words.
I just want to go like in detail. What's the difference? Do you when you confront? Okay, you confront them. You know what? How do you say? You say where do you draw the line? I mean,
Let me see. What example can I take?
Well, this can think. I think one of the examples, very simple example, then I was at the boundaries, whether I'm actually taking pride in my status or actually I'm drawing the boundaries. I mean, that's the hardest bit that I need to limit myself. But then I just say this nicely because I don't want to give a specific example, but there is another colleague of mine who's much older than me. So every time she goes on leave, she will pass me the recreation TV's remote. The expectation that I will turn on the TV, but then she doesn't do it to other staff. So I'm just wondering, okay, is this the same treatment for everyone, or just because I'm being too easy to become her target? Well, then I just told her, I mean, at the time when I can't come early, then I can't come. So perhaps you need to someone to turn on the TV, or perhaps just the TV off. I mean, we don't really need the TV to run; it's just a waste of energy. So to me, just being honest that if you don't want to do it, then just say nicely. You don't have to be very rude. And also firm with her in terms of how she should behave when she enters my office. I may engage in conversation. So I think be firm and be clear on the way that you expect, to be treated. I think that's the key. I mean, this is still something at the boundaries of professionalism, and I did refer to the HR manual on that. So I was on the same side. So one of the perks of working at the Australian university is we need to know the manuals in the HR website. Don't know what it is. Maybe you have better luck.
Yeah, I don't have any HR manuals. Yeah, no, a lot of times, I think like Yessy, sometimes other colleagues or maybe, someone, another consultant might try and push responsibilities that are not yours onto you. And it can be quite a tricky situation on how to, kind of maneuver that. But like Yessy says, you've just got to stand your ground and say like, I can't do it. It's or it's not under my scope of work. Can you please organize suitably? But this should be under your jurisdiction. Please go and handle it. It's being simple and honest and straightforward. I don't think you need to beat around the bush. Sometimes you just got to tell them straight. otherwise they will try.
Yeah.
For more.
I think honesty go a long way, and being honest and being true to yourself. You don't have to satisfy people. I mean, I've seen my colleagues actually being stepped on and being bullied because they kept saying yes, even though they know that's wrong. So you really need to stand your ground as well. To me, this may sound very arrogant, but if it takes something that will compromise your integrity, then if you don't do it, you will lose your job. Then perhaps God's have a different plan for you. I mean, yeah, this may sound arrogant, but so far I don't need to resign because of that. So I'm thankful. So let's see.
Okay. Resign is an option.
It
for
is.
you.
It is.
Okay.
Well, yeah. So far I don't have to take that route. No. The bullying wasn't that bad. I mean, the thing is also you need to be smart, right? So it's always the illustration of you need to act like a dove. You need to be sincere, but you also need to be smart. So sometimes you just need to be. How to say? I mean, I also remember that the children of the world they seem to be more smarter than the children of God are. So to me, sometimes we also need to be smart in reading the constellation of the political situation. I mean, I know there's some people who's hearing this podcast may, I don't want to touch politics, but I mean, this is something that you also need to read the situation. You don't have to necessarily take advantage of it, but you need to be cognizant and you need to be aware of what's going on, and try to save yourself first and save others if you can.
Okay. So when you guys go through something at work, do you share that with your, say, family, your spouse, or your life group members? Do you see them as support, or do you share that with your colleagues and then you just both complain about how tough it is at work? What's your go-to when something bad happens at work? Anyone wants to start? Liz?
Yeah. Well, I've been fortunate enough to have another architect in the family who understands. Yeah. So that's definitely been my go-to in terms of talking about work-related stuff. And yeah, I'm also close with my family, so we are always in conversation. Yeah, and they definitely know what's going on with me, and I know what's going on with them. So yeah, definitely family, and having an architect in the family is also good. Yeah. What about you, Yessy?
Well, I don't have lecturer in my family, but I usually consult my wife. I mean, this is this is not my first position in terms of teaching anyway. So I guess the more time I spend in the industry, the more familiar I am with the problems, with the issues, and we should be able to manage the maneuver. I mean, we do need prayers. That's why we always, pray together to work and to make sure that we remain, being a good testimony for the people. So I wouldn't say that my wife is the first contact. Usually, I need to tame my sinful nature of talking with colleagues and try to vent out. I'm trying to reduce that by a lot because there's not much that we can gain from that. I would say that select a few good people that you can share your problem with, and focus on the solution rather than circling on the problems. You may feel better at the surface, so this is probably this placebo effect. But really, what you need is a comfort knowing that God will always be there and He's there for you. It's just for you to be able to be patient, to wait for the solutions to come. And you need, this is why you need some support from your life group as well. I mean, I did discuss this, boundaries between, am I just being too nice, or people start stepping on me, or I'm just being too proud of myself. So that some of the prompts are quite helpful from my life group. So hopefully, you can get this first aid from these select people that will help you grow as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my life group, I belong to a life group of all working 20 somethings as well. So we are all in different industries as well. So it's very nice to be able to share with someone who's also not necessarily in the industry and who can kind of give you an outside perspective to whatever problems that you may have, and possibly solutions on how they deal with it as well.
Yeah, I thought Yessy was going to say, since my parents lecture me all the time, they're also lecturers. But I guess it's not the same. It's not the same type of lecturer.
No.
Yeah.
The way my father lectures are very, very different. He doesn't speak a lot, but when he frowns, I'm quite scared, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so my family are not my go-to place for sharing about work, because I think it's a very different era. I think they cannot relate. They're just like, oh, just suck it up, or just go through. It's normal at work. So I tend to go to my life good friends who are better at listening, and just they can empathize and not necessarily provide solutions, although they can can sometimes provide solution. But sometimes when you're sharing, I don't think you're looking for solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to vent. Yeah.
Yeah, so I find people at church much more hopeful, encouraging. They give you the message. Because if I go to colleagues who are non-Christians, they just say, "Aya, like that one lah." It's like that one at work. So it's a message that it's quite, what's the opposite of hopeful? It's a bit nihilistic lah. Like there's no hope. It's depressing. So yeah, I
think sometimes if you speak to colleagues who are non-Christian or so, they might offer solutions that are a bit more worldly. It's a bit more worldly in the sense that it's not what as a Christian you should be doing.
You can save yourself, right? I mean, that's probably the quick solutions that you can do. But in the long run, that may not work well for you, I suppose.
That's another opportunity to, I guess, show them what a Christian should be exhibiting.
I guess it becomes quite normal, right, in Christians' life. Oh, you're so foolish that you're doing that. I've got that so many times from my senior colleague. But as I track my path back, or the reason I take this extra job, and then I can see a couple of blessings coming along the way, new positions, new engagements. The opportunities are out there. I mean, as long as I'm not burning myself out, doesn't matter what people say that you wish to do that. But yeah, just do it. And then we may go against, right, what the normal wisdoms are. But yeah.
Yeah, well, just like Yessy mentioned that there's a manual in his university. So I think all of us Christians also have another manual, right?
Yeah, me too. A very useful one.
very useful one,
Very useful
very
one.
thick one,
Very thick, very wordy.
very wordy. Not everyone has finished reading it yet.
I think you read one time also, you might not understand it.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, but the Bible also has a very different um it's it does have wisdom that we can use, but it's not exactly relatable to today's rules as well. So yeah, so compared to your manual at work, Yessy, how does the Bible match up to it?
So this is where things can get sensitive here. Well, Monash is a big supporter for diversity, and that includes some strange position on LGBTQ, I suppose. That where things get a bit messed up in terms of manual at work and manual at life. So I've been trying to reconcile myself to that, but so far the advice that I get from my support group is there doesn't seem to be a straight policy that put me into compromising my faith. So far, I'm still taking the route with my current employer. But I can tell you, I mean, the things in a leading university maybe look good on the surface, but there's the dangerous ground where people start to compromise on the things that everything is permissible, and that where I tend to that tend to be the area that I'm struggle with. It's not really the boundaries between legal or illegal, but really on what are the things that permissible. For example, I usually been I think this is in the previous institution in Australia that I was criticized for the way that I'm giving to the church and the way that church actually gets some tax privilege, and that was actually putting the church at a very very bright spotlight. But that's where the things actually conflicting. So I have to say it took me to journey that doubt. So I'm thankful that the church that I go to, they actually gave me some certainties over how they manage the money and how they actually being a good steward of it. So I guess me, it will be a constant struggle, even though the problem is not between right or wrong, but permissible, not permissible. But struggle is still there. The conflict will remain there.
Yeah, I just hope that you guys have someone to go to, when you are struggling for work issues, certain ethical issues where the principles at a work clash with your Christian ethics. Um, do you go to your life group to get answers? Is there a leader or someone you look up to at church to go to for?
Actually, I just realized at the beginning of the year that we actually have a fair bit of Christians at the workplace. So we're starting the prayer group. Although lately I haven't been attending because we've been also doing our prayers at home at the same time. The couple of colleagues that I actually look up to, and I actually um, I put them as my mentor in the way that I can consult with them these types of issues. Yeah, so I think everything seems to be in place for me. I don't know what it is though.
Yeah.
Yeah, Liz.
I think being able to talk, just being able to talk and have conversation with someone at work is already a blessing in itself. I think for Yessy, that part. And in terms of having to deal with conflicts like that, I mean, in my industry, there are some things where it can get a bit political, like Yessy says, right? It's a bit sensitive. In terms of like work, some things might not progress smoothly. Projects might not progress smoothly unless you do certain XYZ steps which are a bit questionable.
Right.
Yeah. And you've got clients hounding your back saying, when is this gonna move? And sometimes the answer is you can't move unless you do certain steps X, Y, and Z. What do you do then? And that's been something that I've had to really sit down and think about also, because there isn't an answer that's acceptable in that sense. So I'm still trying to work through that one. And yeah, talking to my friends in the life group, they kind of empathize with the difficulty of having to do that. But we've not necessarily come to a conclusion yet as well. It's definitely very tricky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's probably a question that a lot of people will need to struggle with in their
It
work.
is.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, does having another architect in the family help with that question?
We're still talking about it.
Okay. All right. As
Yeah.
long as we're all talking about it.
To be continued.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's the end of my current podcast on work, ministry, life balance. So before I end, can Yessy give some final wisdom to the listeners on, balancing work, ministry, and life?
Oh yeah, thanks for that. Well, I guess work is part of your life. It is the biggest part of your life. Just make sure it doesn't define you. And there are some struggles, as we mentioned just now. You may think, oh, this podcast doesn't end in a high note, but that's because everything is an ongoing struggle. We are still living here, and the promise is yet to come. So just hang on to the hope. I'm sure this will find a way to through. I'm being thankful in my position now, but I know this will come as well my way. So if that comes, yeah, just don't forget we have an anchor we can put our hopes into.
Thanks for that, Yessy. And thanks for Liz and Yessy for being here in this podcast. And thank you all listeners for listening to Can or Not, a podcast where we think and talk about issues we face as Christians and if we can handle them or not.